All right, one or two.
Thank you.
Let's record them.
All right, call to order the Public Property Committee, November 10th at 8:33. The mayor's asked that the first item be removed since he's ill and he's not here.
Well, he's here, but he was ill last week and.
Didn't have a chance to.
Yeah, so we'll bring that to the next meeting.
Okay. Next issue is park rules. Hope you've all had a chance to look at them. I've looked them over again this morning one more time. So I did it last night and again this morning. I have a few concerns.
And before we get into that, I did send this to all the council members asking for comment. I only heard back from one of them.
Okay.
And it was from Rob Patanzu concerning watercraft restrictions. And he said that because, you know, we might be acquiring this property next to the motel, being able to launch kayaks and other things, we don't want to, you know, restrict those too much. And so that was his only main concern with what was said here.
Okay. And I had the exact same concern.
Okay.
Well, except, I'm going to do an except on that one. And it's the except I have on many of them. And it says, it's unlawful to yada yada yada, except at places set forth for such purposes by the city and so designated by signs. So if you put a little kayak sign there, you're good to go.
Yeah, my other thing on that was, we, you know, it may not apply on the salt water, but we used to have a little inflatable raft type thing, you know, one of those Fred Meyer specials, you know, and the kids would romp around on the water. You know, are we going to ban those? Where it says float or raft?
Well,
And also watercraft isn't even defined, so.
Well, it is up here. Yeah, it is. Boat or watercraft means
I
any
see.
floating vessel, whether propelled or not.
Okay, so yeah, so it basically includes everything.
Yeah.
what my overall opinion on the park rules are is that I can read all of it and come away with the fact that basically it's not that restrictive, because everything says you can't do this except when the public works director says you can. I find the wording very negative. I find my reaction to the wording is that it's almost antagonistic. It's not that when you read it and actually get through it, again, you can make the point that yes, you can launch your kayak here. But to get to that point, my back is bristled a little bit. And that's kind of the issue I have with
And
it.
I think there was a few other council members that had that takeaway. And the first time I read it all the way through, and it's like, okay, I understood this to be a set of rules that were going to be over here, not the ones that were posted. And I don't think the public's going to read all of this.
Read all of that.
But if they did, I think the verbiage is in the negative instead of in the positive. And I can go, I've got a few other comments, like animals. It says no animals shall be allowed, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing in here about service animals. It says seeing eye dogs, 12.24.060 animals. It says except seeing eye dogs. I'm sorry, that doesn't cover the ADA. ADA is any service animal. It could be a boa constrictor on some of these things, and that's legal. It could be a donkey. I'm sorry, that's just the way the ADA laws are written.
And you can't even ask somebody.
You can't even ask anybody except, is that a service animal?
Well, the other
I
thing
don't
is-
think you even ask that.
You can. You can ask.
You can't,
You can actually ask, the legal question you can ask is that animal, has that animal individually trained to perform the service for you? Can't ask anything other than that. You can't ask what they were trained for, what, you know, the issue is. At least that's the last I know for them.
And you can't ask for any verification.
Can't ask for any verification because there isn't any.
I could see if, and I do see people going down when the tide is out a little bit down by the marina park, or I can see them going down to buy the motel if we get that area, and throwing sticks in the water to their lands. And this doesn't allow dogs in the water.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing, going back to what you said, sort of anticipates problems that we don't have, and that's why it is antagonistic. Even like the one about camping, you know, I'm just thinking, does that mean that we just don't want people to be homeless? We don't want the homeless walking here. And I know that wasn't the intent here, but the way you read it, it's sort of like we're making a policy on the homeless there. I personally don't care if people camp in a park if they have nowhere else.
That's a huge,
But you're assuming that there was a policy decision made against the homeless, and we haven't had that discussion.
well, we're spending lots of resources, public works and police, moving people that are living, you know, Blackjack Creek, and we have to go in and pick up all we have to clean up the sanitation piece after it. I hope you're not suggesting that we're gonna just allow people to camp illegally, homeless people camp. That's what that whole tent
Tiny
city
house.
thing was. I mean,
Actually, I don't think we've discussed it, so what irks me is that there's a policy against it that we haven't discussed, that we don't want the homeless anywhere.
No, we did discuss that, Fred. We had that whole, we joined in with the, we had that whole join with the rest of the county to have that tent city, that was part of the council, before.
I know that it's my understanding, as we've worked through the KRCC restructuring piece, because affordable housing is one of the three primary elements, and I asked, is that important? And that's when I found out that we had joined in with the other municipalities in the county, and we've, except for the city of Bremerton, everything works through Housing Solutions. So that's where we've given that. So whatever our policy is, it's whatever they're doing.
Yeah, but we've never, I mean, like I said,
Well, maybe it was adopted implicitly, but I don't believe we've had an explicit conversation. I don't remember it, Mark. You have a better memory than I do. And Blackjack Creek is not a park,
no, but what
so
we're
this
saying
wouldn't
though
even
is-
pertain to Blackjack Creek.
Yeah, but look at McCormick Park. Are we gonna allow?
This is for parks only, and I'm supportive of not having camping in our parks. If there are other areas in the city,
Like where?
whether they're designated or they're not designated through KRCC's, you know, housing area or whatever, tent city, that's a whole, to me, that's a whole nother discussion. Do we want to designate this area as a tent city or not, or allow it or not? That's a separate conversation to me than saying no camping in our parks, because as soon as we allow a tent city to pop up in our parks, I don't suspect many other people are going to want to use the park.
Well, and like I said, my reason for commenting on that is you've got to realize that the city historically, to this day, is spending a lot of its resource based on the direction of the city for police and public works. I mean, we're boarding up a house that we've just made arrests on.
Correct.
We just cleaned up a bunch of hazardous waste, for lack of a better term, from down there behind Kentucky Fried Chicken. So if we were going to go down this path, I think there needs to be specific direction to the Police and Public Works Department, because that goes, it's 180 degrees from what we're spending time and money on. And then when you think of, and so like Paul Powers Park, it has this lower kind of area that we've got issues down there. But I can't think of like McCormick Park, that's a lot different from, you know, Central Park or Van Zee. You know, we allow camping at Van Zee at the Boy Scout camp. Now,
But that's an event.
that's an event.
Yeah.
But think of McCormick, that's a very rural, natural thing
There's
With-
bears.
with bears.
With bears, but also with a restroom that's open. So I can see that being very attractive to people that don't have anywhere else to stay.
Right, and I'm not that I'm dispassionate, it's just that we can't create a problem.
And I think it's important to point out that the definition of a park is a park, playground, beach, or recreation center, or any other area of the city owned and used by the city and devoted to active or passive recreation for the general public. And so I think that the city-owned properties in Blackjack Creek, they probably are considered a park by this definition. And so you are, unless you want to change this to identify the specific parks and park boundaries, or refer to the Parks Comprehensive Plan and identify each facility.
Each one.
I would say that this does apply to Blackjack.
Yeah, because we actually have easements down there for that
Well,
Blackjack.
conservation easements, right?
They're
Those
not
were-
city-owned.
Yeah, we have city-owned property
Okay.
in Blackjack Creek.
We had property that was donated as part of that Blackjack Creek grant.
Have we acquired any with conservation grant funding at all? Because a lot of times there's a conservation easement which is recorded, which provides for passive recreation as well. So if the tribe or anybody else's or any other groups own property there for conservation, it's very likely that it would qualify as a park.
Yeah, I remember that was James's project, but I remember the person that owned the Kentucky Fried Chicken owned some property, and they donated it to the city. That was kind of be the beginning of the Blackjack Creek Trail.
Gotcha.
I don't know how we want to move forward with this. Again, I find the wording negative, so I don't know whether I'm asking to go back and find a more friendly.
I would support that.
Well, I would say that, this has to be written from an enforceability perspective, not from a readability perspective. And so the park signs can be transcribed to refer to this section, but to say more generally or maybe more positively, what the requirements in the park are. And so that's what the public is going to see, is what's on the sign. And so the sign would say,
No camping.
no camping, and per POMC, and then refer to this section. And then this language is what the police actually use to enforce if they need to write a ticket for something like that.
Because if we get into it, I know there are some specific issues that I that I wanted to see different. One is signs and billboards. It says it's unlawful to use, place, or erect any signs, yada, 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 or any or to attach any notice, bill, poster, sign, wire, rod, or cord to a tree. I can see people having a birthday party and putting up signs and, stringing cord around. I mean, I think so anyway, there are some of those things. And the one on soliciting, you can't solicit except as authorized by the city council. But I can see somebody wanting to use our park, the American Cancer Society, and having a fundraiser out on McCormick Woods.
In which case they get a special event?
They get a special event permit. Yeah.
Even the birthday requires a special event permit, right?
Yeah, you have to, if you're gonna rent a picnic shelter or something, should we build one out there, you're gonna have to get.
And this says Public Works Director may permit the erection of temporary directional signs or decorations on occasions of public celebration.
See, that's what I'm saying. You can get to the end result you want, but by the time you get there, you're feeling like
But I agree with what Nick's saying is
it has to be written the other
We're
way.
not likely to do not post
No.
signs at this park.
No, that's
Right.
It's
just,
gonna be the big ones.
Yeah.
Stay on trails, no camping, no fires, no
Pick up
firearms.
Well, it's the sign that we approved preliminary that
Yeah.
we've got out there. It's just use at your own risk, keep your dogs on a leash. I mean, this is a document that really just sits in an electronic archive until you've got somebody that stuck a bunch of political signs out there and they came in and complained when we took them down. Then the code enforcement officer can go to section 12.24 and say, this is what it says. But it's not that we're gonna post these park
Yeah.
rules out there.
Again, when you get to games and sports, again, you can get to what you need it to say, but when you read it, you're going. And I
Yeah,
believe that was Councilman Child's reaction when we brought it up
so I do wanna specifically eliminate baseball, cricket, and badminton
under games.
under games.
certainly bad.
I wanna remove baseball, and I wanna remove cricket.
And not lacrosse?
No, it's got sticks.
Baseball has sticks.
Baseball has really hard balls too.
So does lacrosse. But I just,
I mean, why not remove tennis too?
well, yeah, tennis is gonna be on a tennis
Oh
court.
yeah, badminton. I mean, how harmful can badminton be?
I do think for sure baseball and badminton. I don't have a problem with golf, especially the way I play. I don't have a problem with archery.
Well, and it all says, except is set aside by the Director of Public Works, so you could easily have a little archery range somewhere if you wanted.
Yeah, but for just general, think of a large grassy field. Are we gonna have an issue if people are out there playing, if there's 4 teenagers 2-on-2 playing over the line? I wouldn't want that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that this does is it insulates the city from liability. So if somebody gets hurt at a park, and if the person is not violating a park rule, then the city is potentially a party to a
Responsible.
lawsuit, versus if the city has a rule and somebody is violating that rule.
But then you'd have to sign every park, no baseball playing. Otherwise, you have to
Well-
prove that they knew the rule, and if it's not posted at the park, no baseball
Well, it would say
playing.
no baseball except in designated areas.
Are we gonna put that on every one of our signs? Or are we gonna say no golf, baseball, cricket, lacrosse, polo, archery,
Well, we've got
except in
baseball,
designated areas?
we've got baseball right now at Van Z. There's 2 backstops.
Yeah,
And that's a designated location.
area.
So if somebody gets hit with a baseball at Van Z, because they're playing in a designated area, is that gonna be any different a lawsuit than in Oldham's?
I guess it depends on how well we've delineated the area. I mean,
It's a grassy field, I mean.
Yeah, I guess by virtue of having backstop, is that?
maybe, you know what we should do on this? I think we should put this question to AWC and ask AWC to review what's written here and see if they have a better suggestion or, from a liability standpoint, what should we have in place in terms of park rules and what should be posted?
Yeah, and again, what we posted at McCormick, we don't have signs posted at our other parks. We just posted something at McCormick,
Kinda separate.
primarily because of the nature of the facility, and we just put up interim, because we already had that, of course, you read where Donna Main arrested that gentleman. Remember that dog attack?
Oh, right.
Did they find somebody?
They arrested him, yeah,
Oh,
because they determined that what he did do when they investigated it was malicious. and
I didn't
intent.
know that she found him.
Yeah,
I didn't read that.
a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
So besides the animals, games and sports, and the watercraft question, are there other sections that we,
Torpedo, I believe that's an underwater explosive, but I could be wrong. Hello?
good morning.
And has this been run by the attorney yet?
not the interim attorney, it went through the old attorney.
And did it go by the police department yet?
It has gone by the police department and he says it all looks good and something that is enforceable.
Okay.
Because they like you can't do this.
Yeah, it's very black and
They
white.
like that starting point, yeah.
So, okay, so it sounds like I've got 3 areas to look at. I'll get with AWC. I'll have AWC review the entire thing.
Okay.
Just to see if they have other suggestions, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Paul Powers Park, Mark.
Okay, so, I'm not really sure.
well, you weren't here at the last meeting.
Yeah.
What was discussed and what the Public Properties Committee asked for was to bring back a limited scope that would include only, I believe, clearing and grading, a fence, and reseeding the upper area of the park to make it more usable. And so you were looking to see a contract and a quote for that work.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at with this 9,500.
Yeah, which was brought to council actually in
Right.
July.
Yeah, so we've just come full circle.
Did council approve that?
No, they took it to property.
Okay, we brought it back.
So
What
let
the
me,
history was.
well, yeah, the history was that public properties, when we looked at the money we had in the budget, 165, public properties approved 37 or something to do the Van Z parking lot. So then we had that remaining Paul Powers Park fund. Then we did the surveying at Paul Powers Park. So then the direction was to come up with just some interim type, level this upper field, don't touch this, take care of a little bit of drainage. And so on July 22nd, that was that $9,500 proposal that wasn't approved, and unfortunately, this is the one where Olson Associates was basically going to draft for my signature, kind of put this plan together. That was taken off the agenda. I can't remember. Well, it says in this. So then on September 23rd. Let's see, I said on July 22nd, Portage City Council chose not to move forward with a 2014 Paul Powers Park interim improvement design plan. So this was the interim, as a conceptual design, and its associated impacts to the neighborhood had not yet been vetted. So that's why you didn't move ahead. So then during the September 9th council retreat, a general conceptual plan, C-sketch provided, with little to no impact to the neighborhood, was discussed and approved. So we took it off the 22nd, and it was discussed at the council retreat, and then at the council retreat, I added that little sketch that showed actual ball field up here. The lower part had some play toys and a pathway and picnic shelters and things. And that was the one then that was the $67,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a full, ad-ready set of plans for a $300,000 park improvement. Because that was what was discussed at the council retreat is.
Not 300,000. That was not my understanding that was that kind of money.
I think it was. I mean, based on the sketch so we had this kind of interim improvement that council didn't want to move ahead with.
No, I want to reword that statement, Mark.
Okay.
We originally had a public properties committee meeting, and we discussed, we did the survey and that sort of stuff, and then when what I remember is you were gonna do something for the upper, and you and Mark, or you and Nick were going to just do a sketch for the whole piece.
Yeah, there was.
And then what happened is your schedule got very full, and you didn't have the time to do the preliminary things that we needed done for the upper section. So you contacted Olson Associates, and they were willing to do this for $9,500, all of which was very realistic. But it came to council on a consent agenda, and we didn't understand that we were going to be spending this $9,500. And that's why we took it off of the consent agenda and put it back to the committee. It wasn't that we were opposed to it, we wanted to understand it because we didn't anticipate that we were going to have basically a $10,000 bill for the upper level. And then when it was brought back to public properties, you explained that you were just gonna put your stamp, they were gonna do it, something that you could put your stamp on. And you also said at that point that you thought Olson would do something similar for the whole piece.
And that it would be just a little
That it
bit
would be,
more.
reasonably, that it would be just a little bit more
For the
than
lower
this
level.
9,500. So we were thinking in terms of 15,000. And when it came back to us at the 67, that's when we had sticker shock. I don't think that we were ever necessarily opposed to the 9,500. We were just unaware it was going to be brought forward. It had not been brought back to the committee before it came to council.
Yeah, well, I guess,
So I don't think the council said no, I just think they said we needed to understand it better.
In my last understanding from the discussion at work study session was that they're not opposed, council's not opposed to putting a little money in the $50,000 range total to make the upper level more usable, because that's in keeping with what's currently supposed to be going on at the park right now. But if we're looking at spending $67,000 to have a $300,000 parks plan, they're definitely gonna want, as well as I, and I can't speak for you two, a parks plan vetted by the citizens of this community on, do they even want a $300,000 park in that neighborhood? So before we spend $67,000 for a plan that's gonna get us a $300,000 park, we need to find out if that's what they want. I'm okay, and I think you're okay, and I think you're okay, Fred, and I think the rest of the council's okay, authorizing the 9,500 to proceed with the upper level bare minimum, which is some drainage and leveling and some sod or whatever, to make it more usable in its current configuration.
So I'm hearing you say bring this back as a consent agenda item or a discussion item at a council
I
meeting?
would be probably more comfortable with the discussion item
Me
than
too.
the consent
yeah, well, this,
agenda.
well, when I came out.
And then my
22nd
question was, is Olson still willing to do that? That was my question.
And I think I understood, they've already kind of done this $9,500 worth of work.
Well, they haven't been paid for it.
Right.
It
And
started,
they just started. So again, the first July 22nd, it wasn't consented, it was a regular business.
No, it was on the consent agenda.
Here's-
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
I remember it being on the consent.
But I think it got pulled before, as we were discussing the
No,
agenda.
it did, but
No,
I
the-
had remembered it.
Yeah, no, it was a business item, and this was for the interim improvement, because at that one public properties committee, we talked about doing interim improvements. Then we were looking at the active, passive thing that Nick and I were gonna try to find time to go back. And so this was the interim, and then so we were gonna try to work on more of the public input and what was that gonna be while this interim went ahead, but then this got pulled on the July 22nd. And then I remember that Norm called me the next day, he actually delivered the plans, and I'm like, they didn't approve this.
Right, I remember that.
And so then we went to the retreat, because this is the sketch that came out of the retreat. The retreat at that was, you know, to me is, we had the whole conversation about the active, passive, and the decision at that meeting at the full council, which even though you can't vote, but there was direction to staff, was to do a full active on the upper, and then try to do a family-centered with trails, toy areas, commons, picnic shelters and things as the lower. And that was the direction that I had from the retreat, was to move in that direction. So that's when it went from beyond the kind of the thing that Nick and I were gonna do. This second proposal came strictly out of the council retreat direction.
Okay, and I think that maybe I misunderstood the council retreat part, because I heard conversation about, do we want public input, do we want a lot of other things.
And that's what this was. This was my distinct recollection was so that we didn't get into parking, you know, major parking issues without having met with the community, that if we had created like an entire active upper, lower level fields, the parking would have had to have been substantially increased, lighting, and so the work study or retreat, council said, no, we don't want to go down that path, but we don't want to go just with this kind of interim. And so this was right in the middle where it was
My
on
recollection is different too, because council didn't want to do, in my recollection, a whole lot of work there without public input.
Right.
Unless it was just upgrading the current use as it's kind of configured. That's my recollection.
Well,
And
mine
I
was.
certainly don't recall a $67,000 bill
No, I
coming
think
out.
we
Well, well, no, that was the outcome of it. No, but the direction was to not do a plan that created a neighborhood upheaval.
Well, let me say this, Mark.
That
Regardless
would
of
be-
how we got here, because there's been at different times, I think, tangents. I want to be really clear on my position on Paul Powers. I don't mind the 9,500. I don't want to do anything more than carry over enough money from this year's budget into next year's budget to just make that upper level more usable in its current configuration. The bare minimum, that's it. Until the city does a citywide parks plan with citizens' input about where the citizens want to put major money for parks.
So what I hear you saying is bring this staff report and that scope of work back to council for approval, which would be spent, and I think they could complete it this year under our current budget. And then that would require an additional budget for the construction of these $9,500 worth of designed improvements. So you'd be recommending something in the budget to be added, probably $50,000 for grading.
That's my assumption,
Drainage.
and I know that it was
Does that
going to be.
include fencing?
I think it does, yeah.
That's been said.
And include straightening out the fence?
Yeah,
grading
so
it,
is that the
No,
consensus
that's
here?
my position. I can't speak for Beth,
Well,
Director
I
Fritter.
want to understand the upper field as it is right now, and that's the part we're talking about grading and reseeding. Is that not usable for, say, a soccer team that wanted to practice or
It's
something?
not officially sized for soccer.
Well, and it's a little bit lumpy. I think there's some drainage issues and
Yeah, it would have to be, we would have to fill
Around the edges.
around the edges to the east and the southeast and the northeast to get a regulation soccer field. And that's what this interim improvement was to grade it, bring in enough dirt to make that a regulation field, and then put a fence, take care of the drainage from this area, not expand parking, not do anything with restrooms,
Okay,
sandy
so
cans.
my position on it is I don't necessarily care if the end result is for soccer, but I do believe if we're going to put money in there, that the end result needs to accommodate that. I mean, there's no reason for us to put in these improvements and then have it 10 feet short
Yeah, no,
of being
this-
regulation.
No, this was put in per architectural graphic standards, just to get a sense of what would fit. We wouldn't actually,
And that doesn't mean it can't be used for football
Or anything
or
else.
baseball
or
at each
anything else.
corner. of it.
Correct.
But you have the dimension of
Right.
a football soccer.
It'll be an
field
all-purpose
level.
field. I wouldn't
And I
dare
can-
say it's one field
I'll
only.
tell you from vast experience, if the soccer field's 10 feet short, they'll play on it if it's the only one available. We've played on various sizes, you know, I
Yeah.
know that this is the size they're supposed to play on. We go to small fields, bigger fields.
And the
Whatever.
regulations can vary by like 15 meters in width
Yeah,
and 30 in
that's-
length.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if we put the money into it, we have a field that is usable.
Yeah. What you're designing for 9,500 is going to accomplish that.
right, my only,
And the assumed amount of money on top of 9,500 is 50 grand.
50. Well,
It would've
that
been-
would, we'll have
would've
to
been
go out
cheaper
and
if
find, we may sit on that for a bit because we had free fill. That, the whole thing was. we
There's
had
a
free
whole
fill.
bunch of dirt piled up at Sedgwick and Jackson. Those homes are finally being built and they have all kinds of mounds of dirt and it looks very nice. It looks very clean.
Sedgwick and Jackson.
oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that new subdivision.
On the
that's-
way to Long Lake, it's on, if you're going
It's on
out
the
towards
right-hand
Long
side.
Lake, it's on the right-hand side. They've got,
Yeah, I think
oh,
it's
Phillips, I'm
yeah.
sorry. I was off another block, yeah.
We might check on it.
But there's a ton of dirt. I just passed it this morning.
And even if we don't have, it's ready to go until the springtime, if we could get the dirt and pile it up, nobody's using that field anyway.
yeah.
You know, we could pile it in the middle of the
Yeah.
field.
I don't know if they have plans for it or not. I just know there's
Right,
huge
well,
piles of dirt.
We don't know unless we ask.
They just took the tarps off.
And then, of course, it needs to be cleaned.
I didn't see
It
any
needs-
rock. I mean, I just did a quick drive-by and it looked
Right,
like a
but I
nice
mean,
dark
no,
brown.
it needs to be
It's
okay.
virgin
for field.
ground. It's virgin ground, so.
Yeah.
But anyways,
So Fred, are you in agreement with
Yeah, I think that makes sense, but I think the piece that we haven't talked about is the council didn't want to spend a lot of money without knowing that the neighbors surrounding it would not oppose more activity. So there is going to be some sort of outreach to the neighbor.
Well, what we just forwarded, I know that Jerry was very vocal on a couple of theirs, but what I just parroted was my understanding of what was discussed at the work study session, and if we didn't do anything more than that, council would be okay with that, because all it's doing is it's not changing its current configuration for use, it's making it more usable for what it's already supposed to be.
Right, the.
I agree with that, but I don't know if the council does.
I just know that at the council retreat, direction was the fencing, the full field, the family area, expanded parking, and a new restroom facility. We were talking about bringing in like we had in McCormick.
If we put
And
this
so-
as a discussion item on the agenda, I can speak to, this is really what we're intending to do here, and we'll have all the council be able to vote on it, and then we'll know.
But my frustration
Is that we
is
were
that
there before.
in July, we were on this interim, and now it's November, and there's a lot of work to be done between now. I mean, even, my concern right now is even getting this back and getting Olson, because we're pushing them to finish a few things. Just from a timing perspective, I think it would be cleaner at this point to just bring this in January 1, put the money in the budget for this $9,500, and then the.
Well, we have to, but we have to get the council to say yes, and we'll put it in.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it'll be, we can have the.
It's there
convers-
already, it's there already, and so it's not gonna be something we're fighting over.
Yeah.
We just move it into the next.
Right, but you can approve this with Olson, but it'll start.
But the contract may go into next year, in which case there would
Right.
be a budget amendment or something like that.
Well, no,
Or you budget for
you
it.
can get it approved. The council wants to move in this direction, but it's effective January 1st, and I just have a concern with we're wrapping down now, and it's already mid-November.
I can appreciate that, and I also feel your frustration, but I think part of that lies in the fact that two of us are very new to the process, and I think that I really thought it was a consent agenda in July, but that being what it is, I don't think I think had communication been differently, we could have supported it in July. I think we just didn't understand what was on the agenda.
So,
So I think at this point, what I'd like to suggest is we'll bring this forward on I'll bring back the $9,500 design, but I'll have it effective
and we'll take care of it on the budget as well.
as we work through the budget, because right now there's nothing in there's nothing in parks right now.
Well, actually, there's a remainder of 100,000.
It's a beginning balance.
That's
It's a
for this
beginning
year.
balance, yeah.
Yes,
For this year. If isn't it makes sense to me to get something that bridges both years, because if we have a chance to get the dirt, even at a low cost, $3 a yard or something, it would only make sense to stack it up if we get a chance.
well, we could still
And that
do
could be before the
Yeah,
end
that's
of
in
the
the,
year.
that's in the budget right
We-
now.
Well, we could, I mean.
I don't want you to
theoretically-
put us in a box that says we're not gonna be able to spend any money on this until
Yeah,
January.
I would just execute the contract and say that it's not due until April of next year, and if they can work on it this year, great, and Alan can take care of the budget stuff however he needs to, whether that's building it into the budget that gets approved this year, or for next year, or spending money this year.
Yeah, right now we have,
Talk to Alan how it's
yeah, we
how it's
have
got
the,
to be.
Yeah.
we have that ending cash that the 130,000 that's still in the Paul Powers Park that's unspent for 2014. So it's,
So if
So
the
there's-
council says yay on just the minimum fix, we could buy some fill if we need to. That's all
So
I'm
yeah,
saying.
there's three things. One, I'm hearing the committee recommending this contract for approval to the council. Two, I'm hearing a recommendation to add $50K into the budget for next year to implement these improvements. And 3, allow the design money, if needed, to carry over into 2015 at $9,500, depending on when Olson spends the money. And so those 3 items, if it's recommended unanimously, I'll have it reflected in the minutes, and then you can take this contract forward, and I'll get with Alan to let him know that there are 2 new supplemental items that need to be considered for the budget, and
If they're not in there already, however that works.
yeah, exactly. And right now, the parks budget for 2015 is just an ending balance because projects haven't been budgeted, but you can subtract from that ending balance and add projects so long as it balances.
When you say that, and I know at some point we have the impact fee discussion, but can you explain to me the accounts or the money available for parks right now? Do we have impact fees for
There's
parks?
2 pots of money. There's well, there's 3 actually. There's the impact fee money, which has been collected since 2011, which my predecessor, when he wrote the Parks Comprehensive Plan, he included an impact fee calculation. That was approved by council, and in the 3 years we've been collecting that, I think we've accumulated, I'm not sure if it's $150,000 or $300,000, both of those numbers.
Somewhere between there, I think it's a little over 200,000.
Yeah, so I think, and maybe at the end of next year, it's projected to be about 300,000. So there's a pool of money that's sitting there that has never been touched, that is GMA-based impact fees. There's a separate pool of money that is McCormick Woods SEPA-based impact fees, and that was supposed to be for Paul Powers Park, or for McCormick Park, but that officially isn't earmarked. It can be used anywhere. Then there is the general fund revenue, which I believe the Paul Powers money that's budgeted now is a general fund parks kind of a account or line item. And so that money has just sort of been kept over in this parks area. And that's what,
Reserve fund.
yeah, that was what was budgeted this year is listed as Paul Powers Park. And that will carry over to next year and still be there. But that's just general fund money that can be spent anywhere in parks.
So my question is the GMA impact money.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any plans for that, or does that come out of our parks plan, our capital project?
It has to be spent on one of the projects in the capital plan. So Paul Powers Park does have $300,000 in capital projects for in the parks plan. So yes, you can use the impact fee money on Paul Powers Park, or you can use that general fund money. And so that's the budget discussion that needs to happen. And maybe the recommendation is that you put the $50,000 out there, but that council needs to have a discussion on which pot of money that is coming out of.
The important thing about the temporary or the fix here, it's not gonna affect anything else at Paul Powers.
Right.
It's right in this section here.
Right.
If you ever wanna do something here, you may have to cut across the corner of it, but it's not gonna be a big access issue. And then the rest of the stuff can be improved as we decide it needs it.
Yeah.
I just
Including
didn't know whether,
restrooms, lights, that sort of thing.
I wanted to understand that impact fee part, the GMA
Yeah.
part.
And
because-
that's going to be the last discussion today. I think we'll get
Yeah.
into that a little bit more. So,
Okay.
so yeah, and so is that a unanimous recommendation for all 3 of those items? Okay. So I will reflect and make sure that's in the minutes.
And I'll get with Alan and make sure that, and Heidi to make sure that
Yeah, we should write a supplemental form for each of these
How we transfer
and,
it.
and provide it to the finance committee.
that this will be a 2014, 2015 contract, bridging December 31st in the public sector's challenging, so.
Thank you. So the next budget item, I didn't bring my book, but I've asked Nick to just go through and outline for us in a summary format those items that would or could be recommended by public property as support. And he'd like to take note that he'll only bring forward a unanimous, I think, or make a recommendation that
Well,
or forward to the committee on Wednesday that this particular item in the summary was fully supported by the committee or not. So-
Yeah, what I would like to do is I would like to just reflect in the minutes which items are unanimously recommended by this committee. And some of the items, I'm just going to read every supplemental item, and some of these are not related to public properties, and so we can probably just skip them. But if you would like to, discuss them or consider making a recommendation, you can. But I think the important thing is that that when Mark and I as staff go forward to the Finance Committee on Wednesday, we can say that the Public Properties, or later today, the Economic Development Committee has recommended this improvement unanimously. And then you in your report on Wednesday night can say that the Public Properties Committee discussed these items and we recommended approval of these projects, and I think that's something that you should report to council if that's, the recommendation of your committee. So the first item in the budget, let me make sure I'm not missing any gray pages, is a administrative assistant 2 for the city clerk, which I don't think applies to probably public properties. The next item is a marketing and event coordinator, which is probably more economic development than public properties.
So we'll do that in our next meeting.
Yeah, the next item going on to,
Just a second, Jeff can't stay for the next meeting, so can we do the economic development budget piece concurrently with the public properties?
I guess technically we're not in that meeting right now, but the Public Properties Committee can certainly make a recommendation, and since it's the same membership, we can, I think you guys can recommend it as a Public Properties Committee.
Okay.
So the,
Was that marketing person?
What page are you on, Nick?
I'm on page 31 of 139 right now. I'm moving on to IT support specialist.
No, go back to the marketing piece.
Okay, sorry. The marketing piece is on 19 of 139, and so this is a 20-hour position with the city clerk for marketing and events coordinator. And that's part-time.
Was this a full hire, or was this a reconfiguration of current human resources?
It's a new hire.
Okay.
So, do you guys have any discussion?
Didn't they have something where they were trying to bump someone an additional 8 hours?
They talked about it, but I don't think that's,
Correct. And
Wasn't that in the
initially,
budget somewhere?
When that came forward out of economic development, we have thought that perhaps we could bump somebody by 8 hours. But knowing the staff they have there, they've done an ask for 8 hours that was separate from, the work accomplished in those 8 hours are separate from any marketing.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
They wanted that 8 hours for other
Something
things other
else.
than marketing.
Yeah.
So,
So what's the annual on that?
the annual on that, including
45.
benefits, is 4550, or 45,510.
19.
45K?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to see what the total is before I make recommendations on each one. If that's okay with you too? Or see where we are.
What do you mean? Oh, the total ask?
Yeah. So what's our next one?
Okay. The
No,
next,
that's,
What do you think?
you're gonna find that there's a lot
A
of
lot.
money,
Okay.
yes.
yeah.
This is for marketing.
That was the marketing position?
Well, the total ask is $45,000.
Yeah. He wants to see the total of all the supplemental requests before he,
Okay.
because I think
I
that's how we
wanna-
prioritize.
Well, yeah, I gotta try to prioritize in my
Yeah.
mind, because we can't say yes to everything, it's gonna
Yeah.
not make
No,
us
let's
look
get a
very
list and
good.
compare them, yeah.
The next one on page 31 is the IT support specialist, a total of $31,929.
How many hours, or is that part-time?
That's 20 hours part-time.
And that's a new hire?
That's a new hire, yes.
How come
20
that
hours.
And Vince has
20
asked
hours
for that
is
for a
less
long
than the
time.
year? Oh, well.
Hire, what was the dollar amount, I'm sorry?
31,
31,929.
32.
Rounded up to 32.
Yeah.
Let me just speak to that really quickly. That is probably this, I would say, the highest priority.
He needs it.
The absolutely highest priority. We cannot keep our IT department afloat without getting him some support. We just
Well, and it's
can't.
also the redundancy of Vince's, the cornerstone of our department, and if he were to disappear and nobody else
Our whole
knows what's going
department
on.
disappears with him. Yeah, we do need that 20-hour, and that person would also be somebody we'd be taking a good long look at to someday replace Vince. We have to
potentially.
get somebody ready to do that.
Or at least to help transition to another full-time replacement.
So what's the official title of this position?
It is an
IT support specialist.
Yeah.
Okay, so KT just did his non-rep salary surveys, Mr. Mayor, and our full-time IT folks are making 95 grand a year.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that 32 is gonna cut what you're looking for.
We think it is.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there that.
It seems a little low
thin.
compared to the
Yes,
marketing
it's-
person,
it's-
but-
Exactly.
but
Yeah, we think it will.
Tim, I'm
You may
concerned
be
that,
right.
that this labor, or this request for labor doesn't include any of the software or hardware that we need to upgrade our system, or does it?
Well, we're still
no,
working,
this is
we're
what
still
we
working,
approved.
Okay.
we're still working on that in a different pot of money, you know, so.
Okay, the next project is the website upgrade, total of $2,500.
That's part of it right there.
No, total of $15,000.
Is that on page?
It's
13?
offset by $2,500 in maintenance and upgrade, it looks like.
Savings of 2,500 after you upgrade?
Let's see.
Page 33.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's the systems and hardware software.
Or just the website upgrade, 2,500?
15K.
Yep.
That's all.
When they do the 15K, they'll save 2,500. I'm assuming that's a licensing agreement or something. Okay. What else we got?
Correct. Moving on to page 52. That is, this is police and administrative supervisor. Wait a minute. Oh, this is, I think, an overtime request, just $461.
I'm not gonna weigh in on that.
Next, moving on to community development, page 67. There's a code enforcement vehicle, which for picking up, for going out on site to do code enforcement and also picking up all of the illegal signs that get placed in the right of way.
Yeah, I remember this one.
And
How much was the vehicle?
25,000, but it's offset by surplusing the existing 2001 Blazer and maintenance cost reduction. So the offsets are estimated at about $6,000. So it's a net $19,000 expenditure. The Mind Mixer software, $2,500.
How important is that to you?
You know, I think it really depends on what other things get funded. If we're gonna be doing, if we end up doing a parks plan, which is something that has been thrown a lot around a bit in the last week, that will be a really good tool for reaching out to the public without having to have a whole bunch of meetings that most people probably can't attend. And I also think it's gonna be really helpful for the comp plan.
Okay.
There's the front desk clerk position, 10 hours. That's Lisa and taking her full-time.
Put a star by that one.
Page 71.
And what was the annual on that?
The annual on that is
13.
13,000,
And that's just increasing her current. to
from
10
30 to
hours.
40.
And what it does is it frees up everybody that has to,
Yeah, it just trickles down the line in terms of
Okay, thank you.
money well spent.
The next one is a long-range associate planner for half of the year. That would be, our internship would end in June 30th and become, and be replaced with a full-time associate planner.
Full-time?
Yeah. And that's a $46,000, $46,500 for that
For
position.
one half of the year?
Yeah,
For
then
half
that,
the year.
then that doubles for the
Exactly.
following year.
92.
Depending on benefits, I mean, it just really depends if they have a family or not. So we always budget for the worst case scenario until we know who we have, and then it adjusts. The next one is the planning intern. That would be $4,319. And that's for the first half of the year, and that is our current person, Scott, who's been working on the comprehensive plan.
And so this, what was the dollar amount again, I'm sorry?
4319.
4,300?
Yeah.
And that is the first half of the year before this position kicks in?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so if the full-time position isn't created, I would ask the internship be extended through the end of the year and double.
And this is currently Scott, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next one.
A planning assistant, which is an admin staff, they would be doing all the agendas for planning commission, staffing the planning commission, doing, preparing staff reports, more clerical work that our planners are currently doing.
Is this a new position?
This is a new position.
40 hours?
20 hours,
20 hours?
29,000.
79.
Okay.
Moving to,
Skip the UW waterfront thing
oh, I might have.
on 77.
Okay, yeah, the UW waterfront plan, this would be to have students come out to do a waterfront plan, which is something that I know last year we were debating between two projects. We opted for the comp plan, and the council said that if they do a good job next year, we'll hire them to do the waterfront plan. And my position on that is, yeah, I think that would be great to do the waterfront plan, but I don't have the staff to do it. So if the supplemental staffing gets approved, I might be able to do the waterfront plan, but as things are right now, I don't think I could take on that project in addition to everything else.
What was the dollar on that?
20,000.
20K for the UW students?
Yeah, although actually this year, we got the final bill, it was only 14 for, so they
Wow.
came in under contract and sent us actually a refund saying they hadn't expended all the money that was budgeted, so.
Dang. Now, did that professor leave? Did he go somewhere else?
He just got hired for the city of Bellingham, so
That's what I
he
thought I
went
heard.
from Port Townsend to Bellingham as their new director. I don't know if he'll be staying with UW or not. I think it's probably easier to get from Bellingham to Seattle than it is from Port Townsend for teaching, but we'll see. Moving on to Public Works, Mark, I'll let you,
Go to the countless pages.
Are these just the supplements?
yeah, just read the title and the amount and,
The one was taking Lynn, I think, adding 4 extra hours a week.
what is she at now?
Right now, she's at 20, so
Which position is that, Mark?
that's Lynn Kane, it's
Public Works clerk?
Public Works clerk. She's working 20 hours a week, it's just taking her to 24.
What page are you on?
Page 119.
What does she do?
Her and Cindy,
Well, let me rephrase it. Is there any way that you can take someone on your staff that's working part-time and just bump them to full-time and have them become your 20-hour assistant? Because that saves us benefits.
we used to do, Ellen used to be shared.
Yeah, I mean, I guess 2 part-time people is probably still cheaper than 1 full-time person, though, if we're not paying, because then you're bringing healthcare in, whereas for part-time, there is no healthcare.
As soon as you go to full-time, it runs it up 35, 40% above their salary.
Can I put my HR hat on for a second? If you've got somebody internal that you like and they're good, and you have a need elsewhere in another department, KT's obviously different. Our non-reps hit 20 hours, they get the same benefit package pretty much as a full-time. And I understand benefits are a cost, but as far as morale and career development and cross-training and all of those good things, it makes sense to me as an HR person that if you already have somebody that's in place and they do good work, and they want more hours and they want to explore career development, they want cross-training opportunities, job sharing sometimes makes a lot of sense. If it's clearly defined and all of that. If they're totally opposite fields where, you're going to have a huge amount of training to bring them into the new environment, it may not make a lot of sense. But if it's clerical type of positions for 2 sometimes similar crossing over departments, might even help facilitate a lot of the communication issues, if there are any, I don't know. It's worked to our advantage, and it's worked to our disadvantage, depending on the person in the position.
Yeah, I don't know Lynn that well enough to know whether she has the skills to sort of fit, but it certainly would be worth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, we've done it before.
Okay.
So what was the cost on those 4 hours on an
About
annual basis?
6,000, right?
About 5,300.
53.
Okay, fine, okay, thank you.
Number 2, there's a big one.
So in the city hall next year, we're gonna be spending, based on the AWC surprise inspection, we're gonna have to do the generator transfer switch. So that's 100, 110 that's in the budget. In the supplemental, we've got the exterior for 100,000 to basically caulk, seal, and repaint the exterior.
Is that all 4 sides?
Right.
all
It doesn't do window replacement, which is also
Huge.
a source of, it's a huge number, but it's also a source of some of the water intrusion. But at least we'll
Stop the major,
stop the major stuff that's
the
coming
major
in.
leaks going into the interior of the structure.
But at some point, these aluminum clad wood windows were a really poor choice.
It's 110K for generator and 100 for all
Well, the generator's already in
It's
the
in the
budget,
budget,
it's
okay.
not a supplemental item. This
So
is,
this
this
is just the
100,000 is a
Is
supplemental.
that paint and ceiling, or is that just ceiling?
It's painting.
Yeah, so it's paint, repainting.
It's a number that we had, we went out to bid a couple of years ago and had contractors give us some prices. So that's
We hope it's
exterior
still-
caulking, sealing the brick, and it's mainly, you've got areas where the caulk is shrunk and
Right.
and the
Almost
trim
every area
board.
that caulk is just pulled away from whatever it was supposed to be sealing, and now it's a nice leak path. It's really making it really bad in your offices.
Yeah, we get.
You have
wet
water on
carpet.
the floor a lot of times from some.
No, but on our carpet, every time we have blowing rain, it soaks into the building and the carpet's wet.
So that's coming through the actual building, or is that coming through the windows?
Oh,
Both.
Oh. So we're only gonna fix half of it?
well,
I mean, that's just a
We'll
question.
have to address the
They're two different
windows, but
projects.
that's a whole separate
the
project.
window is a huge, I
And
mean,
that's a big number, isn't it?
That's probably several hundred thousand. right?
yeah, yeah. Now, by caulking and sealing and repainting, you know, get on the perimeter, that should take care of some of the window issues. Some of the window issues are also just associated with the window.
Yeah, I think doing the ceiling and painting will also help us determine which windows probably needed. It'll-
Maybe we could do a one-for-one replacement on some of the bad windows.
Yeah, if things keep leaking, then go in and say, we need to replace these 6 ones immediately, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that that's also up there with the IT as being one of the more important ones to you? or-
It is one of the most important, because it's a pound foolish not to fix the building.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building, and if we let it go much longer, then we're gonna have to tear the siding off and.
Yeah, get down to
and
studs
Start
to
going down, yeah,
Take care of
It could
potential
cost us
mold or anything else?
10 times that if we have to get into the
I wasn't
structure.
gonna use the N word, but it's there.
Organic growth?
Yes,
The black variety.
yes. Public Works spectator events.
That
increase-
staffing?
We've been tracking the Public Works hours the last couple of years on events. And Chimes and Lights alone were in the red about, from the budget, we've been about $20,000 just in the overtime it takes to put up garland, take down garland, put up trees, just everything that's associated with it. So this was just a request to keep us out of the red.
Reimbursed for that.
Yeah.
So it's Public Works OT for Chimes and Lights, 20 grand.
And a few other
17.
events, or just
17.
Chimes and Lights?
Probably not all, isn't that all the events? That's what you're upside down on all, when you.
Yeah, Chimes and Lights is the one we're upside down on.
So it's all events, but it's Chimes and Lights is the big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that takes a lot of staff hours.
Yeah, we've been running salaries and benefits, like 30,000 and 2,000.
So what was the LTAC on that, Fred, do you remember?
10.
Yeah,
And
10.
that's
In
just-
round numbers, it was
Yeah.
10.
Last year they gave none.
Chimes and Lights didn't get any last year.
Right. Hopefully this conversation will lead to a much broader conversation I think needs to happen. This is the first year that I've actually been assigned staff to Chimes and Lights to help control the budget, but also have more direct oversight. And I've spent a tremendous amount of time on this. So I think we need to start outsourcing a little bit. It's just smart thought. Clock tower rehabilitation, here's another one, this is 60,000, but the current clock tower, is needing major repair and upgrade. We looked at just repair costs, and it was just as much to just do repairs as it was to just do an upgrade. It isn't just the mechanics and the now antiquated timing system that we had to readjust manually for daylight savings time 6 times a year now. But it's the actual clock faces, the acrylic are becoming brittle and cracking. So we put a big Band-Aid on one of the faces here this last year, where we got some clear plexiglass and glued it to the crack, so we did literally like a Band-Aid.
So it's gonna look real cool when you have duct tape up there.
Well, we didn't, we tried to avoid the duct tape, but, yeah. Anyway, that's a $60,000 cost.
Now, something like that, that's one time.
And that's a
They'll be again
capital.
in 15 years.
Yeah,
Until
well,
next time.
and nothing's 50 years anymore, even,
And you
you know.
said 15 one time.
That's also the sound
That's the
and
sound
and the
system.
clock,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole system up there. Okay, another one was the Bethel Avenue grindouts. So this one is actually gonna be revised. I mean, when we put this together, it was when the design with parametrics was like a 10%. They came up with a ballpark number, and it was about $1.5 million. It's still $1.5 million, 1.7. But the piece that we need to do this next year is more like 700,000, and then the following years they're more like 350. But next year the hope is to do the Bethel Lund intersection, because that won't change with the corridor. That's already set up as 2 lanes all directions with left turn lanes and right turn pockets. And so with whatever happens with the corridor, and I'm assuming at this point that it's just a 3-lane with bike lane and sidewalks, not, 5 lanes. That in talking with Victor, that's the ADT, and that is adequate to just do that. To do instead of doing grind outs, as extensive it is, and it's also going all the way on Lund to Kathy, which is over there between Safeway and Starbucks. It's going all the way to the bridge, and then it's going kind of south, about halfway to the Safeway entrance, and then up north almost to Mitchell. So it's really doing, instead of doing a bunch of little grind out repairs, it's just getting in there with a machine and
Because
Just resurfacing the whole.
it's gonna
It's gonna be
complete-
grind the whole thing and resurface.
grind it and resurface instead of just,
because south going towards between Walmart and Safeway is where it's pretty nasty.
right, but that's gonna have to be,
That's the next phase, right?
that's the next phase. I mean, unless we had a 1.7 million now to do it all, but
I'm trying to think where that one big hole is. Is it after if you're in Safeway coming right, is it there, or is it before there?
there's
I
some,
think it's just north of, or just south of Safeway.
yeah, you start getting into the area over by
Taco Time?
Wendy's and that area because of the construction of Walmart with the subgrade that was there, just tore the roads up. But I mean, at this point, it's a matter of looking at what we could potentially afford, and I don't even know if we can do this one, but it makes sense if we're gonna,
Okay, is this in the supplemental
this
budget?
is,
Yeah.
it's in the supplement, yeah.
Because, that's my
Because
question.
the number was so high. Originally, the intent was to look at doing, the Bethel grindouts from what we thought the grindouts would cost. And then when the number came back so high, it was like, well, we had to rethink.
Do we have money left over from last year's budget for Bethel to move forward? A carryover?
I don't know.
I can't remember
We
what was
didn't.
put in.
We didn't budget anything for Bethel.
I'm not, you'd have to ask Alan what the ending balance is in the current transportation budget, because there may be an ending balance that could be brought into to next year's expenses, but
Yeah, we spent our 130, that's all we had in this year's budget, I think, was the isolated pavings that we did this year. We didn't have Bethel in the 2014 budget. So at this point, yeah, we're looking at what we can afford, but also looking at something that we don't duplicate and modify in the future. So that's why this
Well,
The
maybe not
schedule.
include $1.5 million on our wish list there,
Yeah.
right now, don't include it.
Yeah, because the original thought was that we were gonna be able to do the grind outs and then the next year do the design, the redesign, and have the public outreach, but, and then we have the transportation plan update this year. So the transportation budget is fairly taxed right now, and so a number of things that we had hoped to have in the budget are actually in the supplemental, just due to some realities. And I've got to talk to the treasurer about this one. This was the storm program assistant.
131.
Yeah. So
And
for-
this, and with the rate increase, this is funded, or?
I'm not sure. I guess I need to talk to Alan. I'm not really sure because of the.
To
it
the
was-
970, I think it was
If it was
staff.
going up to the 14 and now.
Well, even if it's not for
It may be a
January,
mid-year hire.
It'd be a mid-year hire when it goes to 14.
Yeah.
So there was actually two, there was somebody for the shop and somebody for the office.
There's two positions in
There
there.
were two positions that were part of the rate.
The same, are they the same cost?
One's 101,000, the other one's 107,000.
Those were laid out when we talked about the increase in the storm rates.
Correct. They
They're
were,
part of,
yeah, they're part of
Right.
the increase. I just need to,
put them in there.
Yeah, I'm not, that's an easy one to say yes to, because it's already, we've already identified how to pay for them.
and then there's the vehicle for this person in the shop.
All of that was covered, right?
Yeah, that's all.
With the rate increases.
So I'll make you a deal on a blazer.
I have that blazer. I actually gave.
Not that blazer, this is a different blazer.
Oh, well, the blue blazer is actually the one that we gave to your department instead of the Intrepid.
Okay. What's the other one?
This is the assistant city engineer. Oh, this is just, it's $500. It's basically taking her to, this is, what is this position? Oh, this is just going to salary and hourly. And then,
Salary.
yeah, it's $500. It just adds a couple more days of vacation.
Gets rid of overtime, right?
Yeah.
Is she exempt to somebody done an FLSA review of
Right
that?
now, she's a non-exempt hourly employee, which
And so what major job duties are changing, just to change her to exempt?
we have a whole list of.
So somebody did that work?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's, that's, she's a
Want to have an
professional. She's,
FLSA lawsuit?
yeah, she's required to have professional licensing, you know, there's those 4 pieces that you need to hit, so. I mean, my issue is when she goes to an evening meeting, then she's gotta go to the SAC meeting, and suddenly it's Wednesday afternoon, and she's, rather than saying, oh, no, your salary. So that's my,
So is that all of them then, the big ones?
Yeah, that's all of the supplemental requests. Oh, except the parks items, which we already discussed, which we'll fill out supplemental forms. And then there was talk, because we didn't budget any parks money. I know at the last meeting it came up that we haven't done a parks plan, and when we get to the impact fees discussion, I think there needs to be a supplemental item concerning parks planning, whether that be just updating the impact fee study to make it so that we're legally sound in terms of collection of fees, or to do the full parks plan. Those are 2 items that are one or the other, I think ought to be considered as a supplemental request, and it would be either probably $40,000 or $100,000, depending on whether you do a impact fee analysis or whether you do a plan. So if you want to write that down as number 17, the parks plan / impact fee study, 40 to 100K, and we'll put together that supplemental request, and they can chew on it if they want to, if you or the finance committee wants to recommend it. I think there's some benefit based on how we've been spinning our wheels, trying to come up with plans for how to spend parks.
Did you guys get the first one, did you get city clerk? That was
Page.
Janine's?
We did,
Oh, you didn't, page 17? It was 9.
yeah, that was,
No, we started with 19. Page 9.
Yeah. This is Janine's
So
position.
8 hours, right? Yeah, we
Right.
didn't talk about that
8
one.
hours additional for 12,500.
12K?
yeah.
8 hours.
Fixed their benefits.
Yep.
All right, so do we want to go down then and say yay or nay, so you can keep track of whether it's unanimous or not?
Well, then, I mean, I can also keep track if it's, a majority of, I can say that it was 2 to 1 for some things. If it's,
Oh, before we do that though, is there what is the revenue that would pay for any of this?
you're gonna have to find it. I mean, in some cases,
So we
like
have to pull out
parks,
something
there
like
are pots of money for parks. I don't think there's probably money for transportation. the general fund money is very limited if there is.
So
any.
there's
General
no,
fund's really,
So-
ending
so you're
balance
potentially
or-
having to come up with revenue
Revenue
or,
sources.
offsets elsewhere.
it's almost more important than this is what do we cut? from the
it's
proposed
just
budgets.
equally important.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think what you would do is say that these are the ones that as a committee, we recommend considering how to fund. And not just saying, we recommend you put it in the budget and cut elsewhere. I think
Correct.
these are just the items that we think need to be considered, and then you have that discussion as a council on,
The park impact fees can only be used for construction, so you could use
Yeah,
it for,
capacity.
for the study.
no, you could use it for the study.
I think you use it for study, you
Yeah,
just
the
can't
study
use
is a
it for any
capital project.
maintenance or upkeep or any of that sort.
Okay. Well, let me throw my 2 cents out, because I have a hard time. The stormwater positions, I'm okay with that, because we've already identified a funding source. So anything that's related to that stormwater increase and the phased-in approach that was proposed,
Because that has revenue associated.
it's all got revenue, so I'm okay with all of that.
Fred and Beck, are you in agreement there?
I'm neutral on that one. I just,
The other staffing issues, I'm gonna have to go neutral on that. And this is probably just my background. I don't see org charts. I don't see potential overlaps or cross-training or any other efficiency of resources there. I'm sure you guys have looked at it and talked about it, and I'm not saying you haven't. I just don't, I haven't seen anything. There might be in here. But I think that's something worth exploring. I see, 4 hours here, 8 hours here. But I'm not quite sure. And I understand trying to keep people under having to pay benefits, or trying to keep that position under having to pay benefits. I'm not convinced that's the best way to go, though. So that's
been the historical
I know.
council action.
I don't think it is the best way. I think it's the affordable way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would be supportive of the IT position. I think that that's important, that we staff that department to meet the needs of the city.
We had 2 items here, I think so generally staffing, I'll subtract the IT from that in terms of a discussion item, but Fred, are you generally in the same boat, neutral on staffing issues?
I'm kind of neutral on everything. It's like I want to fund them all, but then I can't pick out any that I would fund without knowing what else we would cut.
I would also be supportive of increasing Janine's hours by 8, and I would
Page
be
17.
supportive of.
I would support that, page
And
17.
I would
yeah.
also support Lisa's hours going up by 10. I think
71.
those are the 3 particular staffing issues that I think are important and would have a priority. I would like to find funding for those. Because I think, going back to what Jeff said, is as far as efficiency of the department, I think it would make both the city clerk's office.
So
and
that's the AA2 city clerk and the front desk clerk. They're
Yeah,
from-
page 17 and page 71.
Mhm.
I would support that too. I would also support the planning intern, but
Yeah, I don't have a problem, 4,300 for the first 6 months.
page 75.
Nick, you get quite a bit for your money on that intern.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
you get to pick from people that you've worked with, from.
Well, and it's gonna be the same guy. I mean,
Oh, it's gonna be the
Scott
same
will-
guy.
Scott will
Okay, that's
continue.
even better, that's even better.
Yeah, no, that's the intent, is to keep him on until we get the comp plan finished.
So that's a pretty good return on investment. That-
The other thing, again, it comes down to the revenue side. Where can we find the money?
Mhm.
I am in support of the $100,000 for the exterior maintenance before you have issues with having to replace $100,000 in carpeting and drywall.
I would support that too, actually.
Got to get
My,
done.
my-
You
page is
just-
that?
you
My
know,
horror is
and
if we find mold someday.
Well, I agree with you, penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah, that
you
could be
know.
really, really expensive.
So so I don't see any other way to fix a leaky building, we gotta fix it.
Now,
Do you agree on that,
I think we could
Michael?
use REIT money for that.
I think we can,
I
because it's in
think
our
we
capital
can.
facilities
Page
plan.
And I'm not a big spender of all the REIT we have, but that may be,
Yeah,
that may be the
that one
deal.
does have a revenue source.
Yeah, it could possibly have it.
Yeah, I
But
think,
And I
that's-
actually, go ahead.
No, that's the biggest issue to me, is finding the revenue for these items.
Yeah.
Because,
And the Bethel grindouts too, I believe, are eligible for REIT money, if I'm not mistaken.
they are?
I think they are. I think because it's a
Yeah.
capital facility and it's maintenance of something that's in our capital facilities
So,
plan.
yeah.
On the Bethel grind out, since you brought it up, I would actually be in support of finding the 1.7 million and doing it all at once. I don't like bits and pieces, starts and stops. It gets more expensive. If we're gonna disturb the road, do it once.
how far does it take us if we do the 1.7?
Takes us from Fred Meyer to the roundabout.
The whole strip.
Down to Mile Hill.
And I
For
know
all of the
that,
grind outs?
Just grind.
But that's
Just
not
grind
full
it.
paving. It's only full paving at the intersection of Bethel and Lund. But it would be,
smoothed out.
taking out all the ruts.
A 15-year fix is what I think I heard you say.
20, yeah.
15
How
to
long
20.
would it take us to do a design and?
The design
2 or
will
3
be done,
years.
yeah, the design will, oh, for the complete corridor? My guess is it would, well, I don't know if that's a supplemental item to have the public outreach redesign in a year.
You're talking, that's probably $1 million, $1.5 million project to design that whole thing?
Probably $1 million because there's a base,
Yeah, so you'd be having to come up with the million, so it would take 1 to 2 years to complete a design. It would give you a bid-ready specification and plans, but when that actually gets funded is another question.
Okay, what my question is just in support of what you're saying, the 1.7, rather than doing the 700, adding $1 million to it. If I spend that $1 million, I don't want to be tearing it up or redoing it in 5 years or 7 years. I want to know that, but I guess just personally, I would like to see us be able to move forward with doing something on Bethel within the 15 years, if that's going to be our
Yeah, I think that
project
needs to be
life.
your target, is the 10 to 15 year range on actually building Bethel.
And if, my understanding from Safeway to Walmart, or Safeway to Fred Meyer, that section, you're only doing 2 lanes of pavement for this 1.7.
you're just,
Doing
you're not
the
doing,
grind outs.
right, you're just doing.
It's unlikely in any corridor plan, you're gonna cut into that work.
Oh, no, you would
Those 2
probably
lanes.
totally replace it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, again, the reason, the Bethel Lund intersection, the only reason why we're actually doing a complete grind, some grade, and an overlay, a new asphalt section, is because that wouldn't change in the future. The work that's outside of that is nothing more than a Band-Aid, so that it's not
Yeah.
lost
Like
work.
it doesn't even include a roundabout, it's Hammondberry like you
No.
were talking about,
This-
or any,
No, this
Yeah,
is,
now
this is,
Safeway to Fred Meyer would be
Just
totally
patches.
ripped up as part of
Patches.
a reconstruction of
Oh,
Bethel.
you think it would?
Oh,
Would it have to
absolutely,
be?
yeah.
yeah,
You couldn't save any of that
No, I
subgrade?
wouldn't think so.
no.
Well, you're only patching, you're,
Okay.
what,
We're just doing-
2.5
I
feet
would
in
just
width?
thought it was gonna expand on both sides of the road and
No, this is just
No,
going
this is just-
through, like when,
for the major corridor work,
They're gonna spray paint the ruts, grind them out, and fill them with pavement,
for
and,
this 1.7. I'm talking if we do a corridor
if we do a corridor plan, which is a
10
40,
years.
which is a $40 million project, that is going in and it's gonna be, moving utilities out, doing curb gutter side,
So we're
like
gonna
what,
have to take all that asphalt out and redo it all?
yep.
yeah, but those are just,
now they'll just grind it up like they do now, they're pretty slick. They
And
just
they're probably gonna
chew
replace
it up and
subgrade
then
and
read.
everything.
yeah, other than what
What-
we're doing
yes,
at the
what-
intersection.
Got it.
What we're
I
saying is,
understand.
that money that we spend is a temporary. It will not be used long-term.
Correct.
Yeah, the 700 for Bethel and Lund, that is
Is-
a permanent fix, and that will not be ripped.
Yeah, half of it's permanent, the other half is just to make it drivable for the next.
Well, but Bethel to the roundabout is probably permanent too, because that's not gonna be part of the Bethel redesign, is it?
From Lund to.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
From Lund down to the roundabout to the
The-
bowling alley?
Okay.
The Bethel corridor is all the way from the roundabout
Right.
to.
Unless we phased it.
So the first 700K is from the roundabout to Safeway.
No, the first 700
just
is
the
just the intersection at Safeway.
It
In front of
doesn't go-
Safeway and Walmart.
That's to repave the four-way intersection from
And he
the
said it-
approaches to the intersection.
That was my question. On the north side, it doesn't go quite to Mitchell, you
Okay.
know, where the angle is. And going south, it didn't go all the way down
No.
past Safeway. That was my concern, because I know there's a big hole
Well,
somewhere
Yeah,
along there.
We gotta get it, I was hoping we could get at least a Salmonberry, but
No,
But Salmonberry, you know, like I
we're not
said,
getting to talk about it.
we've got to get into, you know, again, what the improvements are. This
So
is,
that
these are
intersection may require right-of-way too, right?
yeah, it's gonna, that's gonna require some sort of channelization,
Okay.
signalization, whether it's a roundabout or something, that's gonna have to be controlled in the future, which would mean it's gonna have to be right-of-way purchases. We have to have some sort of control at Blueberry where that comes in. And
Well,
we,
you're talking realistically 3 to 10 years.
oh, yeah, we're, 20 years.
So in that case,
Because remember,
I don't think the
we've got
city
Tremont.
is prepared to wait another 15 years for pavement improvement or corridor improvement. If we know that nothing's going to happen there, in all likelihood, for a decade,
We should say so.
then let's just repave, patch what we need to do between the traffic circle and Fred Meyer is the best we could do. And my position, it would still be, let's find a way for the
To do that.
1.7 million and just do that all and be done with it and move on to something else that we're more likely to accomplish within a decade.
Well, part of that conversation though is Tremont.
Yeah. I knew that. when
In
I
that
made this
caucus,
statement.
yeah, in that caucus.
I
You know,
think the
At some
important
point, we
thing,
have to have Alan relook at the Tremont funding, you know, because after this budget, we may be using some of that, and maybe our
Well-
match with, you know,
I met with the state last week and I still have to kind of regurgitate and reposition where we're at on that, so.
One of the things that came out of that survey, and granted, there were only 149 participants, but one of the things, I read every one of the comments, and one of the comments, a few of them in there, about why people don't shop in Port Orchard is they can't stand driving on that road.
Well, that's why Home Depot pulled the plug on a project that they had millions of dollars into.
And we know that getting it widened and putting utilities underground and all that is a decade away at a minimum, so.
well, and I think to your point, designing it's gonna take a year or two from the date that it's funded. And so if it isn't gonna happen in 2015, you're at least 2018 before you have a design and a cost estimate for the project. Once you have that design, you could potentially go after federal money to construct. And so it could be as little as 5 years away, but depending on when the grant comes in, it's gonna help us pay for this, and whatever other revenue sources you need to collect, you're looking at either bonding it or saving impact fee money or, forming a transportation benefit district. But you've gotta put the revenue system in place for long enough that you can pay for the roadway. And so even if you have the plans, you may not have the revenue.
Yeah, and with what we're doing, we can actually do it in chunks. We could do traffic circle to Safeway, we could do Safeway to Salmonberry, we could do Salmonberry to Fred Meyer, if that's what we want.
You
But
know, what I'm hearing, and I'm so big on plans. I mean, I like to have the plan, and it's apparent, I'm not willing to make a decision until that transportation study or plan is done in 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes sense to me, because obviously, or it's obvious to me, that Tremont has to get a lot of our attention.
It's gonna have to get a lot of our attention much sooner than later at this point.
Correct, right, and so even diverting $1 million for Grindhouse on Bethel may not, I don't know, I need to see the plan. I need to understand what Tremont's gonna be before I can prioritize Grindhouse on Bethel. And the intersection, again, do we put $750,000 in there?
In my, again, I'm going back to the survey and the
Oh,
comments
yeah.
that we hear. What we hear the most is pave our damn streets.
You know it.
That's
Well,
what
we
we
hear
hear the
Bethel,
most.
Bethel, Bethel all the
We
time.
do. It's constant, and I have to at least support that. It may not come to fruition, but my
Yeah.
position is pave the whole strip from the traffic circle to Fred Meyer. Fix it.
Well, the problem with that though is if you were to just pave the whole thing,
Well, you know what I mean. Do the 1.7.
oh, do the Grindhouse.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's great you have that position because between having traffic impact fees, having support to have those, remember, that's development, paying for development, predictability. But the reality of the city also needing to establish a transportation benefit district for maintenance is huge because the city's never funded transportation.
Correct.
And so to have the ability to have a funding source to do this type of work rather than constantly having to go to REIT or general fund is,
Yeah, so, I mean, as part of the
Agreed.
budget, you have the ability to say, and we want to budget revenue from a transportation benefit district, which is like the $20 car tabs that councils are authorized to implement.
Right.
But, that politically, I
it's
don't
a
know.
tough conversation.
Yeah,
It is a tough conversation, but I think it's time, I've heard Councilmember Clausen continually say, we got 28 miles of pavement, or miles of paved road in this city, and we don't have a plan to upkeep them. And that's constantly what we hear from the citizens, as a minimum.
I was just gonna say, that's McCormick Woods.
Yeah, but at
It's
a,
46 now.
but at a minimum, pave our
Right.
streets.
No, and I
So-
agree. I just have, when we're talking about the budget that we're gonna pass in December, I have a hard time supporting the 1.7 without identifying the revenue source to go with it. I mean,
Well, that's not what we're supposed to be doing in here, is it?
I mean, you're making a recommendation
Right.
on the 2015 budget, so.
I'm supporting,
So I hear you
Supplementary
saying
budget.
you're supportive of 1.7, but you're probably also supportive of 700 if that's what the council wants to do.
Correct.
So either of those options. And Beck, I heard you say that you want to see the plan first before you would support this, or you would want a revenue source?
yeah, I don't have a problem supporting either one, but I wanna know how we're gonna pay for it. I'm not looking for taking $700,000 out of our general fund
Or out of REIT?
budget. I don't know what the REIT budget looks like either. I mean, I'm not sure.
Again, this is just maintenance.
Mhm.
I mean, other than we're trying to be strategic and intentional, that
Right.
the big piece that we're doing at the Bethel Lund intersection theoretically is maintenance today, because that's in terrible condition, but
Right.
it probably wouldn't even get touched with the whole new corridor in 30, 40
And I
years.
have no problem with that. I just have not been through a budget process, and I'm not sure how we find the funds for
Well,
that.
I think the other recommendation you could make is that the council, as part of the budget process, needs to bring forward an ordinance to pay for it, and you can phrase that however you want, and if you want it reflected in, as a recommendation to this committee, it can be. I mean, but that's,
At some point,
Mark's been with the budget process that we have for quite a while. How many times have we put things on the
supplement.
supplement and never even got close to?
I've never had anything,
It's a wish list. It's actually a Christmas list
I don't think I've ever had anything
pulled from the
pulled from
supplement
the supplement in the
in
budget.
finance.
In my
or
6
Put
years.
it into the real budget?
I've never had a success. Anything on my supplement has never
I
been in.
had something last year, but
So we don't want to spend too much time.
yeah, just because we're
It's not
supporting it.
realistic.
Yeah.
Kidding me?
No.
No.
And I'm neutral on this one.
Never had
I,
anything.
I see the need, but I don't see the revenue, so.
Sorry.
No, I didn't, that's why I said, are we really, my expectations of having most, if any of this, make it through the
I
process
think you guys are on the
aren't
right-
very high.
I think you're on the right track, though. The funding for 8 hours or 10 hours that can get us more than 8 or 10 hours help. is
Those are
probably-
viable options.
Those are things that we should be trying to find money for. I'm not sure we're gonna find the 1.7 million.
Or even,
Yeah.
I mean,
if-
and REAP money is viable because there is money there, it's just a matter of
Right,
deciding
but
to
just
spend
about
it.
how much you wanna spend of the REAP money. There's
Yeah.
about $1 million and actually over $1 million in
Well,
REAP.
I'm supportive just an efficiency of the departments. I'm assuming that all of your employees work to a maximum level right now. And when I read this and saw how interrupted some of your department is to cover the 10 hours that Lisa is not here, it just doesn't make sense to me not to fund her addition to the full 40 hours. Because you're picking up more work production than that. And I felt the same way with Janine. I mean, that 8 hours for Janine just,
Can open up quite a few other projects that
Oh,
we can't
yes.
get to now.
yes, those are just efficiencies.
And
And the IT, you know, I reflected back to this summer when the computer broke, in,
The website broke.
No,
Well, the website-
MIS went down.
yeah, and, you know, there was no backup. There was, I mean,
That's a hardware issue.
It
no.
is, but it's IT overall issue.
But it's an
you know.
overall issue for IT. And,
Well, Vince goes on vacation for 2 weeks. And
We really sweat when he's gone because there's nobody to call.
oh
Well,
yeah, if
there
you,
is.
this is
It
a
costs
large
county.
corporation and it,
Over, you know.
I don't, it's remarkable that you handle your IT with one person.
Really.
so I know there's some items on here that we probably haven't covered. Did we want to talk about a parks plan? Proposal?
I think we kind of already identified how we could fund that.
Right, it can come out of the impact fees. My question on that is simply staff time, because we can want to do these things, but does the department have the capacity to do that, to put that on their agenda for next year?
Well, we have to do it anyway as part of the comp plan update, and so getting a consultant on board to help us with that actually, it probably is a net gain for us in staff time rather than a loss. I think I had our interns start diving into that. I mean, that's a 300-page document, and there are severe things that are in that document which are not a light update that need to be done. And I think that when we talk about the impact fee ordinance, we're supposed to be reporting annually on impact fees collected, how the money's been spent, and also updating the project list. And we, you know, the project list, the time keeps moving and we haven't changed it at all. And also each of those parks, I mean, we have projects listed, it says we want to spend $300,000 for Paul Powers, but it doesn't say on what. It just says, you know, this is how much we're going to spend. That went into the fee calculation. Then we're going to spend our impact fee money on Paul Powers Park, but we can't tell whether it was spent on a project that was in the plan or not. It was just spent on the park. And so that level of detail isn't there. And I would be of the opinion that it's so deficient right now that the money you've collected, I think you could spend on any of those projects that's listed. If you don't update the fee, I would just recommend repealing it. I mean, it's $900 a house. Our accounting is fine, but our framework for developing the fee and for spending the money is totally insufficient. I would just say, you know, get rid of the impact fee on parks if you're not going to do
Plan.
at least the $40,000 to update the fee calculation.
And I remember, what I'm remembering is I had thought that perhaps we could use the University of Washington kids to do that rather than the waterfront plan. And I believe you said that you felt the project was beyond their scope. The scope of the project was bigger than what?
I think it's a little bit too technical. Once you get into the impact fee calculations, you really need an engineer on board as well, on whatever team does your study and your planning, because they're going to be doing the capital facilities sort of programming component, including developing estimates of cost and other things, which I don't think students have the experience to.
What about doing the public outreach and, no, it needs to all
I
come
think
from the
that-
same,
I think that they could, but when you're talking about a number of parks, that's several different stakeholder groups as opposed to a citywide type of thing, and I think it's just too many events for them to conduct. because I think he
I
wanted,
don't remember, we did a parks. you
yeah,
know,
James
plan.
did one in 2011, but
Yeah.
my understanding is that he took Paulsbo's plan, plugged all of Port Orchard's components into it and followed the same framework, but he didn't really do the outreach component of it to develop.
No,
what
we
each
did,
park-
we did do an outreach, I was on
Hmm.
yeah, we did do, we had,
Can I get that forwarded to me, please?
I don't know.
We can find
Well,
it.
the parks plan is online. I mean, so the product of that, but in talking to, at least I talked to some of my staff about what happened, and they didn't really, if James did something, it certainly didn't involve my staff.
It was in a vacuum.
Was it?
I think it was at the planning commission, though. It largely went
It
to
was
the
a
planning
planning
commission.
commission.
So
That's-
it wasn't like
that's not-
community workshops where you were out.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think James took, kind of cut and pasted a
Yeah.
lot of other, like Paulsbo and jurisdictions and.
Example, the dog park. I'm not, I don't think you were here. I'm not opposed to dog parks. I just don't know if the citizens want it there or elsewhere. And I'm not comfortable continuing spending money on a park because we think that's what the citizens want. I'd rather
Yeah, we had two
find out
people testify.
what it is they want. Yeah, but that's,
And that's not really,
that's not an outreach.
no,
that's
it
not-
met
that's
the
not-
technical requirements of state law, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a planning process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went to the planning
I'm
commission.
almost likely to say not do anything next year, and that we got some serious funding revenue problems here. Take a pass on the impact fee or pay for the study out of the impact fee.
I think you're gonna have to, at least, if you don't do it in 15, you're gonna have to do it.
It doesn't make sense to do it outside of the comp plan framework,
Yeah.
because all that stuff needs
yeah.
to fit together.
Yeah, you're right.
So are we discussing the impact fees item now?
No, we're
No.
discussing
Okay.
whether
Park
the parks
impact
plan.
fee should
Okay.
pay for the study as part of the comp plan update.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I
I
think,
know, just off the cuff, I'm tired of spinning my wheels. I'm tired of having the confusion we had on Paul Powers Park, because Mark is right, we could have been done with that project had we understood it better, had we had, this is what we're gonna do in place. And that's not where we are. We're not gonna get there if we don't have an organized, planning process.
well, in a detailed plan, I think our plan just, it didn't get into the specifics of we are going to build this improvement at this park. But it did say we're gonna spend this much money at this park.
Correct. And it's also, last year in the budget, the $165,000, it said Paul Powers Park, but it was always my understanding that was general money for any park. It was just,
That was basically, Carolyn Powers at the time was threatening to have her husband's name.
Take it.
Did something
So
didn't
there was-
happen. So I think that was labeled that to just make an effort to keep that relationship.
How much is in the impact fee right now for parks? You
I
said
think it's about
200?
$900 a house,
No, how much is the total of the amount of
the amount that
money?
we have at least, I think at least 200,000.
So we could pay for this out of that.
How much, now the McCormick fund.
That's a separate
That's a
fund.
separate
That's a separate fund. It's got about, what, 180 left.
Fred, would you be okay supporting spending impact fee money to get a comprehensive, detailed, park-by-park plan? And I'm talking from priorities to what the citizens want to see at each park.
yeah, and I'm good with that as long as, if it's within the scope of the planning department for next year.
Yeah, I think we can accomplish it. I mean, I would,
Even if we put our intern on it.
yeah, I wouldn't put the intern on it, but I think we would hire somebody that had the tools to really take the lead so that it doesn't demand a lot of our time.
Okay. I can support that because I don't want to spin my wheels on parks anymore. And again, it complements what we're doing with the complimentary, or the comp
And
plan.
I want to move forward on parks. I just want to go forward with the citizens' wishes versus kind of a shotgun approach. Okay.
Any other projects on the list that need discussion? There's the UW project, the waterfront plan, which I don't care one way or another.
Waterfront fund seems still very premature given things that,
It's slipping.
other things we have to work on.
The waterfront plan is been planned and planned and planned.
I agree.
And you're not gonna get the port's cooperation. They went through the last waterfront plan 4.0, and they finally said, we're done planning this, and we're not gonna call it.
I agree with that. There's been so many plans for the waterfront.
Just,
No, I mean, at some point, there's gonna need to be a plan, but, because the Edon Jesperson plan, Jesperson, they're a 10,000-foot conversational at some point, and but to me, that's gonna come out of a redevelopment conversation with an Opus or somebody. There's gonna be actual ownership of property conversations and easements, and because when you look at the quilt work of ownership and DNR aquatic leases and
port.
the film, it's such a hodgepodge. And that's been my issue from the beginning, is you need to establish a constraint, and we don't, quite honestly, we have very little ownership. We probably have 10% ownership of anything.
Ownership lease.
The only thing that we have is the library.
And, well, and then the Bay Street right of way, which I think
Well, we
doing the
have
Bay Street
we have a
corridor
burned out
plan.
Mexican restaurant.
Not yet, not yet.
Well, that's not even close to our trail either, so.
Yeah.
It's just, we have such, quite honestly, if you're really looking at the person that is gonna take the lead, it should be the owners of the property, or not it.
Yeah, the only thing we should take the lead on is a Bay Street corridor plan for streetscape improvements.
Right. I wouldn't, I'm not supportive of spending $20,000 for the UW waterfront plan now. If they could have taken on the parks, I would have been okay throwing money at that, and we could have paid for that out of the impact fee and not the general fund. But if it's too complicated, that's fine.
You would have much better luck on putting money towards the taking down the marquee and putting up the new lights, which are gonna fall down here pretty soon, and the marquee with those rotted timbers.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I do have a couple
10:20.
questions before you leave, because I know that you're.
We have impact fees, but,
That's a separate discussion, yeah.
so.
Have you guys been contacted by the HBA on to discuss impact fees? Did you meet with her?
No, I have
I
not.
haven't either.
For Teresa?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
wanted to talk to us
I am
individually
meeting
about the
with her.
impact fees.
When are you meeting with her?
She's just wanting to.
I would rather she
She-
talk to all of us.
I'm
in a
meeting with
public
her right
setting.
before council meeting on the 18th, right out
Yeah,
here.
I don't want a public meeting with them.
She wants to.
I don't want a private meeting, I want a public meeting with them in front of
Oh,
everybody.
I have no doubt that she's going to come and speak
Yeah,
to the full
I
council.
have no questions on a personal level about it, I just want to hear what everyone else hears.
Anyways, that's on the 18th.
Yeah, my response to her was, I asked her if it was an individual or a private meeting, or she wanted to meet with the whole group, and I haven't got back with her.
She wanted to meet privately.
One-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's,
And
I don't have time for that.
But before you leave, and I don't know, I had a couple of questions about things that are important to me within the city. And one is Tremont, and one is a pedestrian path. And right now, I think those are both two significant items for the city. And they're not assigned really to any committee. You know, we've had discussions on both within finance. We've had discussions with both in economic development. But I didn't know whether they should be, I don't know whether they're streets and should be part of public property, or whether they're, I mean, I don't want those to be lost in the cracks anywhere. And so I was wondering if they should be assigned, if a committee should be responsible just to hear reports on them.
Yeah, that's challenging, because they really, who would hear that would be public property / finance / utility. They really, those two projects alone kind of go beyond.
And I think the committees offer different perspectives on those issues, and so I think bringing it forward to each committee and reporting to each committee is important, because the committees are gonna discuss them from maybe a little bit different perspective.
And that's what I've been doing, is
Yeah.
I've been trying to go to each committee, but quite honestly, we were on hold on Bay Street for a year. now that the direction staff has been given, I met with a full 8 hours last week with transportation local programs on both those, Tremont and Bay Street, on what we're doing and being very strategic and intentional. They're needing to make sure that we know what we're doing, so we don't get in trouble. So we had a very good meeting on Bay Street, and I feel good at this point of, they feel good of our plan. Tremont is, like I said, I still don't really know. I have to have a conversation with the treasurer, I think, and the mayor before I make any kind of public comment.
But it sounds like they're council-wide issues and not just a particular committee.
Right, they're council-wide issues.
Then this is
Then maybe
something
it's a
that-
work study.
Can
was
we
gonna
get
say
quarterly
maybe
updates on a work study?
And
Yeah.
that's what we've done that in the past, where we've had like a Tremont update that was at the work study.
So, the other item on the agenda, I know you're trying to get out of here, right? Can I just briefly, what's in your packet is a draft ordinance to update our impact fee ordinance. Our current ordinance is a little out of whack with state law, and as I told the finance committee earlier, it's sort of explaining what's wrong with our current ordinance would be like telling somebody how to build a bomb. I think that it needs to happen in closed doors of executive session if you want to know why we need a new impact fee ordinance. In any event, whether traffic impact fees get adopted or not, I think an ordinance that largely looks like what I've provided to you should be adopted and probably will go forward in early January. I think the Finance Committee wants to discuss this in executive session on Wednesday, and so if you study this in advance and also look at our current impact fee chapter, which is totally different, this looks nothing like what we have now. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss the potential litigation issues in executive session next week. The other,
Didn't get the school one, unfortunately. I was able to follow through.
well, and that's,
Transportation in the park, but the school one, for some reason, just didn't make a lot of.
well, and that's the thing. So the other component of this, and one of the things that the attorney is going to recommend to you, is entering into an interlocal agreement with the school, because right now, we have adopted an ordinance that says that we're going to collect school fees, but the school is the one doing the study. Yet, if we get appealed, because we can be appealed for every application of an impact fee, so every time it gets paid, somebody could appeal the city, and we would end up defending the school's map, which we don't want to be in the position of doing. And so our interim attorney has given me a template for an agreement with the school district where they would hold us harmless and agree to pay the cost of defending any litigation that might arise concerning the application
Sounds
of
good
impact
to me.
fees.
Okay.
And so I'd like to bring that forward in conjunction with the impact fee ordinance, and I'm talking to the school district behind closed doors. And what the attorney has said is, look, sometimes school districts have a lot of heartburn over this because they feel like the city is really sticking them with something that they're not really comfortable with doing. But at the same time, if you're not comfortable defending the impact fees, you shouldn't be collecting them in the first place.
On their behalf.
And so, and really it benefits the school district tremendously to have impact fees, but it doesn't benefit the city, yet we're the one taking all the risk for them.
I agree.
So, anyway, the impact fee ordinance and also concurrency, which impact fees and concurrency are very related in the law. Both of those things will be coming forward in January for consideration. And then the second component of it is, do we adopt the traffic impact fee in accordance with the study and the presentation? And I know the HBA has talked to you about this, and I'll say, generally, the people who are in favor of this are the people who don't yet have development approvals or commercial developers who want to build like a Home Depot or other stores. The people who own existing lots or have vested plats, they're opposed to this because this is adding to their cost of development and they've already got their approval. So the home builders, they represent people who build homes on finished lots. The impact fee is something that is paid at the time you build your house. But it essentially defers the cost of making improvements at the time you subdivide property. So it makes it easier to subdivide property and to get commercial approvals, and harder or more expensive to build on a finished lot. But it also defers that cost until a later date, which is generally beneficial for the development community as a whole.
Right, and the home builders are, Teresa
So-
mainly represents people that buy lots and
Right.
build houses, so it's a direct pass-through cost.
What would help me tremendously would be an overall encompassing proposal to this, well, not proposal, but an outline of increases that we're contemplating, because we have impact fees, stormwater fees, park fees.
Well, we don't.
Well, we're not proposing to
there
increase
yet.
park
No,
fees.
but I'm just saying, all of this stuff laid out on what is or isn't being proposed to increase,
See,
because.
that's what I've been
I-
asking for.
Yeah,
I would
because-
say-
Because
I would say that's
I don't like these little bites,
no,
because,
see, that's-
because
that's-
if we don't have the vision in front of us of what is priority, we could potentially fall to the trap of saying yes to the smaller bites and have massive public backlash when it comes time to do
Without
something
doing
that's the biggest piece that we need to do.
Well, the one thing to realize though, on traffic impact fees is you don't want to confuse people by mixing apples and oranges also. So a storm drainage rate increase affects the average citizen.
Correct.
The water sewer gap analysis, which is going back to utility committee with a revised document that will then come to work study at the end of this year, the December work study. You're going to have that water sewer piece of knowledge. And at that point, that's all that affects the
Correct.
average citizen.
And this
Well,
affects
and if we do
developers.
Cascade Natural Gas,
Yeah.
Right, but the traffic impact fees are a developer pays for development fee, the park
Yeah,
impact fee.
not doing this affects the citizens, because
Okay,
you're,
'cause you're gonna
right
end
now,
up
this assumes that 42% of capacity increases are the expense of the developer. If you don't do this, 100% of the cost is on the
The
citizens.
citizens.
And I think if you frame that up that way,
Right.
that this is what current citizens are looking to having to pay in the future. This goes to development of property that the developers will pay and not current citizens.
Right, the reality of it is the city has deferred its maintenance on roads for years, and water and sewer and storm. But not only done that, but by never establishing an impact fee, they historically allowed development to occur with little to no offsite improvement.
Yeah, it's the same reason why the Kitsap County is the lowest one on there. You want to encourage development at the lowest possible cost to get people in here. And it's
But at
having
what
a drastic effect on the current citizens. And I
Infrastructure.
understand that. And I know that even if my feeling is even if we raise the impact fees in certain areas, it's still going to be more cost effective or less expensive to build on an acre lot here than it would be in Gig Harbor, because the property values are significantly different.
And if anything,
But we need to weigh all of that before we start adding $10,000 per home for,
see,
impact fees.
but you're saying the long-range plan is what I wanted to say before I approved anything, is how is it going to totally impact our citizens? I mean, it's a real key thing.
Right, and I've
The-
always said that we're getting you.
We're getting there and
as
it's-
quick as
we can't,
possible, but
exactly.
we know, but again, a clear distinction between impact fees, parks and roads, than rates to operate our proprietary funds.
Correct.
And we're getting to the point now to where we know what the storm rates will be or can be. I mean, you've already passed that. That's a direct impact. And then the water sewer, like I said, next Friday is this Friday, the 14th. That's this Friday. We've got the re-presentation of the water sewer gap analysis. So, like I said, we're gonna have those numbers in front of you.
And I did not, when we looked at this traffic impact fee, I did not have concerns about their formulas or how they used to get to their end result of this $3,800. What I questioned was the planned road the road list, because, and as I understand it, the impact fees pay for the increased usage or how they're going to impact the roads.
Pays for additional capacity in
Right.
those areas.
So I had questions about, we've got on here.
Like Sherman and Fireweed.
Well, I'm looking at the Bay Street pedestrian path at almost $5 million. Part of that has been, I mean,
Some of that's grant, but remember, only 42% of those project costs is being paid by impact fees, and the rest is grants and citizen dollars from the general fund.
correct, but when I'm looking at this, I'm wondering how a house going up off of Sydney is going to impact these things.
Well, I think you have to look at it, downstream impacts are what you're looking at, and by building the Bay Street pedestrian path, you're potentially taking trips off of Bay Street itself, and because Bay Street can't be widened, you're adding to the east-west waterfront capacity of a transportation corridor. And so that's how we justify putting a pedestrian path into the plan, is you're adding capacity through our downtown by providing that facility.
Okay,
And so, that was the other question I think that a lot of council members had, is how, some of these projects, you could build a house off in McCormick, and how is that really impacting this? And you really have to look at the system as a whole, and if something over on one side starts working better and allows those people to start using a road that they're currently going around and using other roads, it has effects of shifting traffic patterns throughout the city. And that's why you plan from a city-wide basis rather than having these little sub-areas where you'd have, the McCormick fee is here and the Mile Hill fee is over here, and there are different amounts based on the projects in
Right.
those sub-areas.
And some jurisdictions do that to some degree, much larger jurisdictions, you mentioned
Yeah,
Pierce
if
County.
you're a county, you absolutely want to do it that
That
way.
way.
And right now, I don't think Kitsap County does, and so all the money that's collected in the UGA here is going to Silverdale.
you know it is. And I just looked at these and I questioned some of the costs on,
Doesn't have a city rate.
Yeah, well, and to
I
some
mean, and
degree,
they could be very accurate, or they,
the problem is that
Well, and this will get updated in the transportation plan next year,
Right.
so it's very likely that the fee and the list will change in a year and a half from now. But at least this will start getting the money in the door to start paying for the Bethel and the Tremont
Right.
Bay Street projects.
The other thing that I'm just going to say is my daughter's family lives in Lakewood, which, and at any rate, they got their renewal for their license tabs. And it was like $175 for their car, and most of that goes to Pierce County Transit.
yeah,
That's where it goes, because they saw a breakdown and it went to Pierce County Transit.
they've created that, and we're gonna be having that conversation here to add $20 to that.
We are having that conversation.
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying earlier, is I think this committee is part of your budget recommendation. If you want to do the overlay or the Bethel grind-ups, you should recommend bringing the Transportation Benefit District $20
We've
car
never
tabs.
had that conversation. I mean, I think we should, but we just never
I think your
have.
committee should recommend bringing it forward in conjunction with the budget.
I think nobody wants to sponsor it.
Well, when we did the traffic impact fee, we basically, I think it wasn't this one, but last year when we first started talking about hiring TSI to do this work, we talked about at that time, this is gonna be the impact fees, but we also, at some point, need to start looking at transportation benefit districts, and that's as far as it went. And not do what the city and the county unsuccessfully tried to do back in 2000, which was they tried to do a concentric, here's the Bethel corridor, and they got a compass out and they drew these concentric circles and said,
Oh,
you live
areas of-
here.
yeah.
You're gonna pay more than the person who's further out.
That,
Yeah.
that failed miserably.
I'm okay having that conversation. I actually think the conversation is long overdue. We need to figure out a couple of things, and kicking the can down the road for 15 years isn't gonna get this city ahead.
Well, the important thing is the TIF.
We have to talk
The
about
TIF is development, paying for development and getting those sorts of capacity projects built. The TVD is for maintenance.
Yeah.
So, but if you have the two funds, because the problem is, we're taking money out of.
This one you put into that.
Yeah.
This would actually create for these grind outs,
For
we say, hey,
maintenance.
we're using this
Yeah.
maintenance money citywide to do maintenance from the
Yes.
TBD, and that's what a basic 0.2% at a cash register or $20 on a car tab. Everybody equally is paying towards maintenance of the roads. The TIF, again, is development paying for development.
Yeah, I mean, my thought, and I can have this reflected in the minutes, is that this committee wants that to be brought forward for a discussion. You're not
Yes.
recommending it, but why doesn't it, under this item 4, the committee also recommended that the creation of a TIF district and consideration of car cavities be brought forward for discussion? And I'll make
I
it
would
clear
say
that this is not a
funding-
recommendation.
Yeah, funding sources in general, which could include but not limited to those two.
I'll put
Capital
something together and,
Capital and maintenance.
Yeah.
I would have thought finance would have brought it up. I guess they didn't want to touch it.
It's the third.
they're not afraid of it.
rail. Okay, I do need to leave.
Okay.
Unless there's other things. On wayfinding signs for the next meeting that you're going to have, even though I haven't closed this meeting, I would support option 3 with the rust color.
Okay. I'm gonna send out an email just verifying what I understand the recommendations from each of you to be on these supplemental items before I put them in the minutes. And so
Okay.
I'll confirm that with you before I,
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for your work, guys.
yep,
Thank you.
all right.
And are you gonna do anything with the recorder as we close public?
Yeah, I need to go
comments?
switch the disc. Why don't we take a 5-minute break?